Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Today, we're fixing the bedsides, plugging up some rust holes, gonna try to push back in the frickin' balloon from the out of control loading over the last 60 years that kind of, and now you got like, back into where it's supposed to go. I have an idea on how that's gonna work. Let me pick that up. This is my theory. I use a shrinking disc, because then I think I could shrink it, because when it's been overloaded, the thing balloons out. And if I shrink it back in, it should work. I tried beating it with a hammer, but that's not happening. And I haven't blinked the entire time I did this intro. Leave a comment if you can make it to the end of the video without blinking, and then subscribe. Let's go!
First thing you're going to want to do in any of this is scrape off all the old undercoating. And this truck certainly has a fair bit of it, at least whatever's still stuck after 60 plus years. You can see orange, kind of a darker sort of hint of orange, and I think that's just because it got a little bit of overspray through the fender opening when the assembled bed was sprayed orange from the factory. So scraping it all off, got the knotted wire wheel to be sure to put chunks of wire into your skin. I wear leather gloves when I'm using that, and I strongly recommend a face shield. Now I'm using magnets to hold the patches together. You can get the fancy magnets. These are magnets from a microwave oven. Oh yeah. Always someone comes up to you and goes, "Hey, you want an old microwave? It doesn't work." And instead of saying, "Nah," you should say, "Heck yeah, take it completely apart." In the electron gun, you'll find 2 honkin' big magnets. And you're going to take those magnets, pull them out of the microwave, wrap them thoroughly with electrical tape, because if you drop them, they shatter. And then you use those magnets for holding stuff. It works awesome. You can hold up the freaking yellow pages with these magnets. It's a joy and a delight. Unless you have a pacemaker. Don't put it near your pacemaker. Things will change. You can see with the patches, instead of slicing in with an angle grinder and a cutoff disc, I am using holes, step drill. I drill a bunch of holes in the corners of it. Pretty easy to find. You just use the deepest pitted area of the rust and start drilling until you get to the biggest hole there. If you do your patches with 90-degree corners, which are easy to cut with an angle grinder, the stresses when you're welding it really get intense and focused in the corners, and it really can mess up the panel. So if you can drill the holes and have rounded corners in your patches, the rounded corners disperse the stresses a whole lot better, and you're less likely to have a bizarre panel that you could probably surf off of the waves. Nevertheless, here we go. I wish I had a hole puncher that could punch like 1-inch holes or 13/16 holes or whatever the biggest size is of my step drill, because then I could just punch out the little punch pieces, stick them in a hole, and weld them all up. As it is, I got to make them all, which isn't the end of the world. If you check the video link above, you can see where I did a whole bunch of patching on the fender edges, because the fenders received an equally disgusting amount of rust. And I had to replace the flanges in their entirety on one fender and a significant part of the flanges on another fender, which conspicuously matched the gaping holes of rust in the sides of the bed. Here we are. Welding. Big patch in this corner. I think I blasted a little bit of that way back before I shortened the bed, not knowing the magnitude of the gaping hole inside.
One of the joys of older trucks that are being used as trucks, because back in the day that's all these things were, is they tend to get loaded pretty violently by just chucking lumber and bricks and small children and vegetables and things into the back of the bed, and they hit things and balloon it out. These aren't a double skin bed, they're just, better than a tractor. I'm losing my balance. And the front of this got pretty hammered in towards the cab from all the years of being loaded. And when we did this video in turning the long bed into a short bed, including raising the bed floor 4 inches, I beat on this like a Salvation Army drum, trying to get it back into where it's supposed to be, and I got it pretty decent. However, I lost my balance again. I'm crouching on the floor, that's hard to do. I've since learned some skills in this bodywork stuff, and I'm going to use this guy right here. It's a shrinking disc. And the shrinking disc is I'm just going to float it over the surface like this, and it's spinning this, and there's no teeth on this. It's really smooth. It just kind of rubs on the surface, warms up the surface. You can kind of see it expand because it's got to go somewhere when it heats up. And the vibratory nature of this little beastie kind of shakes it all back down. And I should be able to flatten this darn near perfect just with this and some compressed air, which would come out of one of these. When it gets ballooned out from the way it was loaded, the metal gets stretched. So if I shrink it, it puts it all back in. If you're buying one of these, I picked this one up off Amazon from somewhere, just find whatever is the affordable link. This wasn't as affordable as I'd like. I think I paid like 80 bucks Canadian, which is probably like $13 US. And I just picked this side because I figured it was manageable. I found it works really good if you take the entire guard off. You don't have any cutters, you're not likely to lose any digits. Get rid of the guard and then grind the nut and the stub of the shaft down so that this thing sits totally flush. And then you can just float it over the surface and this thing doesn't gouge the hell out of your panels. If it's crowned enough, you will, so be careful. But this is flat and the sides of the bed are flat. So this should work, I think. I'm gonna float it through there. We'll see if we can make it happen.
So we heat it up a bunch of times. It expands a bit. You cool it off with compressed air until you can touch it, and it all shrinks back. And I got it pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but it's pretty darn close to perfect. And this ain't no show truck. So, but I did come back to it a little bit later on and gave it a little bit more love, but it works. Works okay. And you can see where it's certainly more polished in the creases and areas where things have hit the bed, and I'm just kind of working those, and it brings those creases and raised areas, pushes them back into the panel so it goes back to its original flat state. At least that's the dream. That's what we hope for. Eventually you get sick of it, so then you just move on to another part of the bed, like plenishing some stinking welds and trying to make that flat, wailing it out with a hammer. I use a combination of body hammers, a dead blow hammer. One of my favorites to use is a plastic and rubber ended hammer. And here I'm using an air hammer. Apparently I said something to the camera, but it was better not to know. Probably full of expletives. At this point, for some crazy reason, I decided to start shrinking with a torch. I don't know if I did this previously. I'm certainly doing it now. I've got oxyacetylene using a number 0 tip. I heat up the metal so it's red hot. It's going to expand. It's got nowhere to go because the surrounding metal is cold. So it's going to expand and usually come out towards you, unless you're doing it wrong, in which case it'll go into the panel away from you. But the magic that you want is to have the metal come out of the panel towards you. When it's red hot and kind of stretching a little bit, you smack at it once or twice or a couple times right in the middle of the red hot area of where you've heated up with the torch, and that shock and vibration kind of upsets the heated part of the metal, and the cold stuff kind of pushes in on it. It makes the metal thicker as it jams the metal in on itself. Frickin' voodoo. Just trust me. I should get a t-shirt made that says frickin' voodoo, because that's how most of this is. Then you cool it with compressed air, and then it kind of locks it all in and keeps it going for you. Personally, I'm enjoying the shrinking disc a whole lot better. It seems to be a little slower to work, a little more delicate persuasion, whereas the torch is a little bit more aggressive. The air hammer, that's almost too aggressive. The air hammer has the precision of like a sledgehammer. Well, that's kind of dumb. The air hammer has a precision of, well, a machine gun in a way. It may not be precise, but it'll get everything around it. Really, you're just going to watch me hammering away and trying to get this thing nice and flat, and there's only so much that needs to be said. And when you're doing bodywork, ain't nothing better than blues.
heaven knows how many hours of beating, hammering, shrinking, stretching, regretting, wishing I had something else to do with my life, I've got this pretty decent. I can take a ruler, set it on here, and kind of go all the way along, and there's an acceptable level of disappointment in here. Theoretically, a thick spray of like feather fill or something, or a lot of coats of primer, or a skim coat of filler should hide this fairly well. I'm going to do bed liner in here, tintable to the color that I'm going to paint the truck, so that should hide most of it, but I got this pretty acceptable. And having had reasonable success on this side, I got to go back and do the other side, because like an idiot I looked at what I had done and went, I can do better. So we'll get on that, and then this thing should be pretty much ready for primer. Woo!